Hello, folks. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West. And I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. And I have a very dear friend, one of my main mentors, especially in the realm of genetics, Dr. J. Dunn. Dr. Dunn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure, Chris. It's good to see you again.
Oh, it's great to see you. I asked Dr. Dunn to be on the podcast with me because when it comes to the realms of genetics and learning about liver balance and liver detoxification through a system known as methylation, Dr. J. Dunn's been the forefront person in my life to teach me genetics. It's one of the main ways that I myself got my legs healed from Lyme disease and parasitic infections. When I had Lyme disease, it was so hard, Doc, I remember, to treat people. And Dr. Nancy Miller is one of your students that learned, and she did your methylation processes on me. And I will say to everybody listening that it was really one of those surreal moments when I was standing. I could stand for more parts of the day where I wasn't having to sit down and rest, afraid that I wouldn't be able to walk as well anymore. And from methylation processes. So I want everybody out there to pay attention, please, to this, because we're going to have Dr. Dunn with us many times. So don't worry. We're going to give everybody opportunities to send in comments so we can ask questions. But I know you've been with us before, Doc, but I want to know what's going on in your world. I like to do catch up too. I like to find out what's going on. What are some new things that you see on the horizon? I want to go over some basics, but I really want to just talk about methylation and processes you want to talk about. But what's been going on? I mean, we hadn't seen each other in a while. It's been quite a long time. We were just talking. What's been going on?
Yeah, just trying to get the My Happy Genes word out there, the genetic testing, and it's been amazing. And doing a little bit of teaching. I'm teaching at the Palmer College up in Daytona, which has been fun, looking at some of the students coming out of chiropractic school and kind of planting those ideas into their minds on how to really get to the underlying causes of imbalances and diseases. So it's fun. I like that.
That's great. They have a school in Daytona. That's right. They have Palmer, Florida, like Palmer South. I forgot about that.
I wish I'd known about it because I did the Iowa.
Yeah. How long have they been there though? How long have they been in?
I want to say maybe 10 years or so. I'm not sure, but
if they would have had that option, I would have gone to Florida and done it too. So there's not even a question. I was in Chesterfield in St. Louis. It was freezing cold most of the time. So,
you're picking.
Oh my goodness. Well, I do want to start off with, there's so much to learn and look into when we talk about methylation. You're teaching the students this. Now, when you get into the realm of genetics, side note, and you're teaching these students that, with chiropractic and moving manipulations, bones in place, that there could be a deeper problem to this person always having some form of imbalance in their physical body. What are their expressions, or what do they think? Are they on board with it?
Well, at first, because in chiropractic school, they're like musculoskeletal system rules, just adjust the body and let the nervous system start working and it'll all start to sort of straighten out. And you and I know that that's just not true. After practicing for many years, we go, that person keeps coming back in with the same issue over and over again. Why? What's really at the core of that? And you and I both have asked that. Why? What's really driving this? And to say that they're on board with it, not at first, but then when we show them the differences, when you adjust somebody and they're fully methylated and their bodies are balanced, they don't come back and they go, wow, that was amazing. You've got to have that foundation of balance of the biochemistry, and then the adjustments really have a much more powerful effect.
So they stay more stable. And people out there, if you're listening for the first time with Dr. Dunn, we are talking about liver methylation. But Doc, could you give them a basic, brief, description of methylation?
Yeah, because there's a lot of misinformation about methylation out there, and I have a lot to say about it, but. Essentially, it's the formation of a carbon atom and 3 hydrogen molecules. And it's important because it changes the way genes are expressed, whether they're turned on or turned off. Depends on methylation. And those methyl groups, that carbon and 3 hydrogen molecules, travel around the body and they turn on certain enzymes that can make the body function correctly. But one of the main things that methylation does is repair RNA and DNA and
Mm,
keep the DNA functioning like it should, which is kind of a big deal. Because if we're exposed to toxins all the time, toxins and heavy metals and chemicals and radiation that can damage DNA. That goes on all the time, but our ability to repair it really depends on how well you can make that methyl group. And it comes from B12 and folic acid, the activated forms, so.
mm,
I think one of the most studied genetic variants is the MTHFR gene
mhm.
that can interfere with methylation. And so, there's a lot of information out there that's very short-sighted that says, if you have that gene, if you have that MTHFR gene and you can't make methyl groups correctly, then you should take methylfolate. Well, it's not a good idea unless you know what's going to happen because it's a dynamic process when you turn on methylation.
Mm,
You got to know what's going on in the detox pathways of the body. And you mentioned liver detox. One of the most important ways you can turn on liver detox is through methylation because it forms glutathione and it starts up the detoxification pathways. But you got to make sure you're ready for it. You got to make sure that the pathways below it are open. Otherwise, you just stirred up a bunch of toxins into your bloodstream that you can't get out, and it's miserable. I can tell you firsthand. And we saw this in the clinic. Was
mm,
that we
mm.
started turning. We were like, oh look, an THFR gene. Let's start using methylfolate, and people were like, yeah. At first, they were like, feel amazing. And then about a week into
Then
it, like, ugh. So
like it feels so sick. I mean, when they like, it's always like the old adage, doc, where it's the die off, and you may feel some reprieve, but where does all the trash go? Like, where does it land?
no, I don't believe in pain. You shouldn't have the Herxheimer reaction. You shouldn't have adverse reactions from this. If you get it working, great. If you get it working correctly, I should say, and open up, those pathways down below, meaning like the sulfur transferase, because when you turn on methylation, you make sulfur groups, and you got to make sure those move out of the body. But if you have a genetic variant down below there in the enzyme that breaks down sulfur, then sulfur is going to back up, and you're going to have I see people with like itching and gut issues and this cough that won't go away. So if you open up that pathway and then you turn on methylation and then make sure all the other pathways are open for detox, it's a great thing, but it's very short-sighted to just do that one gene, just give methylfolate. It's not going to work out well. I mean, 1 in 1 million persons are going to go, yeah, it's fine, I'm good.
That's a real
Everybody
that's
else is going to
everybody
be
else does.
suffering.
Yeah, I mean, keep going, doc. I want to turn it up because that's. I mean, I was just thinking about when you say you give one methyl transfer 5-MTHF, or one of the things that you'll hear a lot of the methylation practitioners out there when they tout that, some say, well, you just need to do a really good methylated B12. When you talk about sulfur transferase and sulfites, like just taking, she told us, I remember the first time you pointed out, like if we said MTHFR was right here, it's like you're just affecting that one spot when you put B12, but you're not getting this whole other area around here. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, and then, and I was so impressed, and I want everybody out there to know, because it's hopeful. It's like, yes, there's more to give with B12, but with that, doc, when we're talking about knowing that there's more, and you shouldn't have a Herxheimer reaction, you shouldn't feel toxicity. Hit on that a bit. It's like there are other components. Like, what are the other things that you say check out for sulfur in gene testing, or what is your next steps when you first have somebody come in for gene testing?
Well, we do the My Happy Genes test panel, and it tests for 675,000 of these SNPs, and
Whoa.
R is one of them. And so we report on 600 and I think 611 at this point, and they're on that chart. The not all 611 are on there, but all of those that are on there are tested for on our panel, and so. It's really amazing because I think people really start to understand why they are the way they are, because, it's not just about methylation or detox, but it's also about, personality. And we can
Mm,
tell a lot about a person by looking at their report, like, oh, I bet you're one of those people who can never follow directions and
uh,
is thinking about a better way to do things. And that's Chris Motley. That's Dr. Motley.
no. Well,
Or they are they have the impulsive. Oops, sorry. They have the impulsive gene.
mhm.
They tend to be impulsive with their decisions, or tend to be depressed. Or they tend to be anxious, or they don't learn well. They have sort of some learning issues, and so the first step really is about compassion, having them understand why they are the way they are. And then, we dive into maybe their genetic risks of certain diseases. But then we look at this biochemical pathway, and I start to teach people, and I know you're about this too, giving people power back, the power to understand their own bodies and go, well, wow, I'm anxious now. Is it because this enzyme isn't working well? Oh, I
Mm,
forgot. I'm supposed to take, if I take green tea, it's going to make it worse. I've been drinking green tea. That's probably why. Or I've been taking turmeric and it's backing up my MAO enzyme and now I'm getting irritable. Oh, I forgot. I got to go back and review my genes and look at what I should or shouldn't do
yeah.
that maximizes genetic potential. So it's empowering,
Mm.
to teach people this, but also the software will tell you what food you should do and food you should not do, and then what supplements would be beneficial for you. So it's a process.
As I'm thinking too with the process, I think it's so great. Like, okay, so we back up and you said you knew personality wise. And I love going through all these because if you
Mm.
saw a person's gene report, you said that you could look at it and go, okay, you're I don't know, you're
EDD or
yeah, yeah, ADD, OCD, ADHD. So, doc, so we're saying like if you looked at a person's gene report, there are certain genes, which are, you told me this, genes are enzymes, or basically genes are proteins, enzymes, and that could tell you if they do have a tendency to have
yeah,
ADD or ADHD.
right. Well, so our genes are a blueprint, and they tell our body how to make these enzymes. So they're the
Mm.
instructions on making
Ah,
enzymes. So if you've inherited the wrong code for that enzyme is going to be inhibited. It's not going to work at the same pace that it should work. So if you have an enzyme that breaks down adrenaline, which is our stress hormone, right? If you can't break it down efficiently because of a genetic variant, you're always going to be in a state of like a hyperactivity, or a sympathetic dominance,
oh,
we call it. But it's going to make you anxious and worried a lot. And we tend to blame ourselves and we go, oh, it's just the way I am. Here's my mom was that way, and probably she
yeah,
was,
yeah,
right?
she
Uh,
was.
so, and we beat ourselves up. We go, why can't I just learn to relax? Why can't I be calm? Why can't I be chill like my friend Bill or whatever? But we look at their genes and we go, this is why, because your nervous system can't break down these, stress hormones like other people can. So it keeps you in a constant state of anxiety, and it can make it hard to focus. So when I look at that particular genetic variant, I go, I bet you're really smart, but I bet you have trouble focusing. Like in school, you were one of those kids that you knew what was going on, but you just couldn't complete the assignments or complete the homework, or you were just so distracted by things around you that you didn't do well, but you're smart. And people are like, yeah, how'd you know that? It's like, well,
Eh,
it's right there. It's right there in your genes.
So you could see it in their genes, and then you're saying it's compassion because if a person comes in and they're like, maybe they were labeled like when they were a kid. So you're saying like, oh, you have attention issues and you're supposed to sit here, but on the gene test doc, you're saying like, no, I know you're the kid that couldn't sit there in school very well, but you're brilliant. It's just you don't have the capacity because you're producing too much adrenaline and it doesn't get broke down well or reabsorbed
Right.
properly.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the compassion piece. It's like there's a reason for that. It's not because you're a flibberty gibbet or or whatever, can't focus. And these people, they're usually very interesting people. They're really usually very creative, very smart. but they can't shut it down. And I think, some of your listeners are going to go, yeah, that's me. I can't stop thinking like at night. It's like, shut up. I'm trying to sleep here. And their mind is going, blah, 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 I forgot to do this today. Or anyway, oh, I got this great idea. I should try this. So they have difficulty sleeping. They have difficulty just relaxing and calming down. And when we work with that, the cool thing is, it's not like, oh, sucks to be you. The cool thing is we know how to work with that enzyme. So that enzyme, imagine it as like a little, like a receptor. So there's a lock and key kind of action that happens, right? So adrenaline is supposed to connect to the receptor or that enzyme to break it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're born with a receptor or an enzyme that's closed, adrenaline can't get in there to be broken down. So it's going to stay around in your bloodstream and do all the things that it does. It creates the stress responses. The cofactor for that is it can be vitamins or minerals, and they're very specific for each enzyme. And when you give that body that right cofactor or coenzyme, opens up, boom, adrenaline can get in there and be broken down. So it's all about the enzymes. It's the genes aren't going to change. The genes are like, nope, that's what you were born with. But you can biohack. You can go, oh, well, this person doesn't break down adrenaline well. So instead of giving them, like procortisol balance or some ashwagandha or something, you give them the right exact nutrient for that enzyme and bam, it breaks down their adrenaline and their whole nervous system calms down. And it's really fascinating because they'll come back in and go, I think this is calm. I'd heard about it. I've never really
I've never even experienced it.
Right. And they're like, whoa, this is cool. What else can you do? And so with that chart that you showed, each of those purple balloons, they look gray on there, but has a specific cofactor that makes it work better. And so if you've inherited those variants that slow down an enzyme, we know the right recipe to speed it up and kind of biohack. So it's kind of fun.
I think it's really, really great how you just described the mechanisms because a person says I do have that hyperactivity, and literally it's a physical structure where you say a mineral or vitamin fits into the side of that little receptor. The receptor opens up, the adrenaline drops into it, it gets absorbed or broken down, so then you can regulate it. And then another important thing that you said is like, because there's individuals out there that will have the ADD, OCD, ADHD, and I think they feel lost or they have children that have it and they feel lost in that area. Right. And you could read that report and say, yes, definitely. And when that occurs, Doc, what the breakdown mechanisms too. So like, let's say, I remember you talked about this before, and I'm not trying to switch gears too much, but when you're talking about like those mood enhancers or mood effectors, you were talking about one time like tryptophan, and I thought it was so interesting. You said on one of the gene reports you had at the class, you said, well, this person, if you watch, should not eat tryptophan, which is like turkey or, some food source, because they couldn't even break that down to turn in to serotonin. Is that right? Could you talk on that a bit? That was amazing to me.
Yeah. So there is an enzyme called the tryptophan hydroxylase enzyme, and its job is to break down tryptophan into 5-HTP and then into serotonin. And so if you have a genetic variant there and you can't break tryptophan down, tryptophan becomes something called quinolinic acid and kynurenine, which are neurotoxins, and they can cause neurological damage and psychological issues. It's one of the worst ones, actually, Doc. It can cause just some crazy kind of brain chemistry imbalances, even much worse than like low serotonin. In fact, it can lead to low serotonin because tryptophan is not able to break down into serotonin. But if it goes up the other way, then it's going to cause neurological damage on top of the low serotonin. So it's the major depressive disorder kind of genetic variant. So for those people, they definitely need to watch foods with tryptophan. It's going to send them the wrong direction. And that is turkey, as you mentioned, but it's also wine and cheese and chocolate.
Oh my God.
I know.
God's gift to everyone. Oh, yes.
Really. Yeah. So, but the thing is, we can upregulate that tryptophan hydroxylase. It has a cofactor as well. And when we do that, then tryptophan can be broken down into 5-HTP and serotonin, and it can really solve some major depressive disorders in that way when we understand the biochemistry of what we're working with. Again, opening up that receptor so tryptophan can get in there and not have to take that alternate pathway and go toward neurological imbalances, but it gets in there, breaks down, and then does what it's supposed to do when it has the right cofactor for that enzyme. So it's about the enzymes and their cofactors or coenzymes. And those are always vitamins and minerals. And so it's just precision. It's understanding, oh, they've inherited that tryptophan hydroxylase enzyme. They need this nutrient and in this amount. And so it's stunning though when you do it that way. This person doesn't have to take antidepressants. They make
Wow.
their brain work correctly, right? It's
That's
like,
exactly so amazing because that's so amazing, doc. Like if a person didn't have to take antidepressants, so I'm going to get back to this because this is a big issue for a lot of people. This is a great leeway into it. So a person could say, like, tryptophan, I have to take a cofactor. So I have to take a vitamin or mineral to help turn on or affect that receptor to grab onto the tryptophan. When you
yeah,
talk about like the first reason, like in the first place, like the tryptophan receptor was warped, or is that the word? Like it was not
right.
accepting tryptophan. And I know it's
Yeah.
genes, but one of the questions I've heard some patients ask me is like, why would that happen in the first place? Is it like the way the ancestor was raised or something that it doesn't receive the tryptophan?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, our ancestors survived for certain different reasons, and we survive today. And one of the things that, we look at the MAO gene, which is the warrior gene, and our ancestors won the battles, and those were the ones that were able to procreate. And this particular genetic variant, I don't know. I scratch my head about it because we don't really know why, but it makes people really aggressive and really, like the bad warriors, the ones like the Genghis Khans and stuff that are just brutal, would be in that category, not just like the good fighters, but the like really intense warriors
The
that went to
intense
battle, and
warriors.
then they pass those genes on, and so they are in our gene pool, and they're not particularly adaptive to our environment and our world today, and they can cause a lot of problems for people. But we can cheat, we can biohack, and we can learn to work with those genes. And I happen to have that one. I have the TPH and I have the MAO as well. So I know how this one works in spades. I took a deep dive into this one because it was causing a lot of kind of mental craziness in my brain. And once I figured out how to work with it, bam, it just solved it. And so it's a big deal. And I don't think it's talked about. And, you don't hear people talking about it this way, and understanding the biochemistry and how to balance our brains with just very specific targeted nutrients. But it's powerful.
I would think so. What that would mean, like, as if you saw the MAO, like, let's get to the warrior gene. Like, if you did, like you say, you could feel worse if you did drink, like, say, too much wine or had too much chocolate. You had that whole pathway. You could feel worse, feel more depressed, or more, have those issues. Sleep problems would occur,
Yeah.
and you have the MAO gene, and that's a really big issue because is that why, Doc? If you have anybody that has attention issues, like the MAO gene, I remember you telling us that it does have an effect on how serotonin, which is your happy chemical, and your dopamine. There's another form of MAO that would affect your dopamine, your pleasure. But you're talking about MAO warrior. Would that mean that there could be aggressiveness? Like somebody could actually go into the aggressive aspect of it?
Yeah, very much so. We think of serotonin as our happy neurotransmitter, and it is when it's in balance. But when it's too high, it can really cause a lot of irritability and aggression. And there's even been, cases where,
Wow. Wow.
lawyers have pleaded, lenient sentence because this person has the MAO gene. It's a kind of
Really?
yeah. And turmeric is inhibits that enzyme. So that's the other thing we talk about is, okay, we're going to upregulate an enzyme with a nutrient, but there are things that slow down enzymes, and this one is turmeric. And so somebody who has an MAO gene should not do turmeric because it'll slow that even further and cause serotonin to build up and be aggressive. I had a patient call me just recently, just screaming because his test results weren't in, or he didn't agree with them, or something. He's just hysterical. He's screaming at me, and I took a look at his gene report, and he had like 6 MAO
Oh my word.
nips. I know.
Whoa.
And I
Whoa.
said, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, my practitioner put me on turmeric and a bunch of B6," and I was like, "What?" Oh my God. No wonder. I said, do you feel a little grouchy? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I was like, get off of that immediately. And then I saw a text from him like in a couple days later, and he was like so much calmer and right. People think they're doing the right thing because turmeric is like anti-inflammatory. I'm sure you use it a lot on people. It's great for lots of things, but for this person, not a good idea. So
That's a great point, Doc, because you hear um I say a lot of practitioners and individuals out there and people listening today, they hear that, oh, this one thing would help this condition. And you and I'm not saying I know all this, but this is with me before I met you. I'd be like, oh yeah, that would actually help this. But then now, since you know all the cycles in the cell, you think, well, it could help this person, but because their genes are able to receive that product better than another person, basically,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is just one case. So let's say depression or anxiety. And guys, everybody out there listening, we're gonna have other ones with Dr. Dunn. This is the stuff that she does, and you guys gotta see her, and you gotta be treated by her. It's amazing. And when we go, like, let's circle back to Doc about, like, let's say things in your body healing properly, and when we, like, the chiropractic school, they say, well, I got to get adjusted. Now, I'm not trying to rabbit trail everybody, but this is what happened to me. My neck would keep going out. And a guy that was in my class told me it was gallbladder function because Chinese medicine, the gallbladder meridian in the neck. Now he started working on the gallbladder, but later I learned I have like 4 types of MTHFR from a gene test that I was like, well, no wonder my neck would always go out and stay out, is because the gallbladder and liver are connected, right, Doc? They're connected in some way in Chinese medicine, and my liver did not process things. So
Yeah.
in school, I ate horribly. Okay.
You? What?
You know me. I ate horribly in school. I drank a Mountain Dew every day,
Oh
literally.
my gosh.
Horrible. And I'm not going to hide it. I did it. I fess up to anything I do. And then, but like, let's say people come to you, Doc, and they say, okay, I got this genetic SNP. I eat right, and they try to eat right, but they're not getting the nutrients, right? I mean, that's the big key. You have to have the nutrients that would actually fit into those genes to make them work. Is that proper to say?
Yeah, yeah. And we think we know what eating right is,
Mhm.
but we don't always know what eating right is for us, and it's so individual. And
Mm,
so again, if I was eating a bunch of turkey thinking that was low carb and healthy, but I have that gene variant, I'm actually gonna feel terrible and not know
mm,
why, and
mm,
seeking out help, like something's wrong. Or nightshades, the vegetables like the tomatoes and potatoes and eggplant and all those, we think of those as healthy or eating right. And for some people, if they have a genetic variant there, it's going to cause joint issues, and inflammation. And so it's very individual, and so that's the thing is everybody, has their opinion about what eating right is, and then of course, yeah, getting the right nutrients, and that's a whole nother topic, right?
it is. It's like, Doc, when you talk about getting the right nutrients, because I know individuals out there could say, well, I went to a practitioner and they made me take so many supplements, but and point in case when you talked about not having to take antidepressants, there are certain nutrients your body specifically would need, and I would be willing to take so many supplements if I didn't have to take an antidepressant.
Right.
And it does. One thing that always surprised me was from your teachings, and that one of my patients, she had Hashimoto's, and you taught me, the testing, and I was doing the testing, and I worked with her for 8 months, and I'm not patting myself on the back or trying to say I healed everything. I'm just saying her Hashimoto markers went away. She didn't have any more antibodies to it. And she was surprised. And then I saw her 6 months later, doc, and she said that she stopped taking her supplements because she was sort of like, I didn't want to take as many, but then she didn't get Hashimoto's back, but she was getting tired again, and her thyroid numbers were going down, but she didn't have the antibodies show up. So all I'm saying is, when patients are out there, there is a level of commitment and with this, right? I mean, they have to, like, people need to want it, though, I would suspect.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing, at least at first, but because people are like, oh, I gotta take a handful of supplements. And it's like, okay, your choice. Would you rather take an antidepressant that is going to cause all kinds of side effects and damage your brain and do all kinds of fun things? Or like pick one. That's fine. And it's going to cost you a little bit of money because it's not paid for by insurance. And but once they feel the results, they go, whatever, I'll swallow them because I feel amazing and
That's right.
my mood is great and it is so worth it. Because when your mood is down, your work load is going to feel heavier. Your relationships are going to feel heavier. Your thoughts are dark. It's just it makes life a whole lot less pleasurable when your brain chemistry is off. And if it's that simple that you take a handful of supplements to fix it, then I don't know what else could be better.
Me too. Me too. Look at this, doc. I got my pop. Look, come on.
I know.
I'm just popping in my mouth every day. Like, and
Yeah.
I think it's funny, doc, because I know I'm half Asian, and people say, like, Asian don't raisin. That's what they say about my body and my face. Like, they don't your skin doesn't raisin because they say you look younger because you have Asian. I'm like, well, but I was sick with Lyme really bad, and I know in my heart of hearts that the methylation was so key that it's helped my cells stay healthy and stay strong.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about all the nutrients, so let's when people need these extra nutrients to help, like, fortify their body, help strengthen their body, why is it, like, is it because, doc, like, our food sources, like, it's not geared right to give us the nutrients that each person needs, right? Like, it's because we're in an environment where we're not getting it. Is that correct?
Well, that is a piece of it. Yes. And one particular example is K2. I don't know how much you know about K2, but K1 we find in the leafy green vegetables, and our gut is supposed to convert it to K2, and K2 is magic. It's for a lot of reasons, but so a couple of problems there. One is our guts don't do it efficiently, and our gut flora is not the same as it's ever been because of all the toxins and antibiotics and things that have damaged our gut flora. So we're not efficient, number one, in making K2. So we used to eat grass-fed beef, grass-fed wild game, that was very high in K2. And butter, grass-fed butter, high in K2. And K2 has this unique ability to open up the vitamin D receptor. And it's something we have talked about, you and I, in the past, but it's incredibly important for the immune system. And so when you talk about Hashimoto's, one of the key genetic variants is that vitamin D receptor. And so, yeah, we're not getting the K2, and then A and D are the other two nutrients that open up that vitamin D receptor. And we used to get that from fish. We could eat a lot more fish, but now fish is suspect because of all the mercury and overfishing and the problems with getting enough fish. So we take fish oil, and that's one way to get it. Cod liver oil is full of A and D. And then not getting enough sunshine. People aren't out in the sun because they think it's going to cause skin cancer, and they're terrified of getting one tiny little ray of sunshine on them. And I think it's a disservice that we've done to make people afraid of the sun. And so those three things can really lead to some autoimmune conditions. And, the Hashimoto's is one of the things that we saw. So when we start trying to get the nutrients up, the vitamin D is in mushrooms and I forget what other things, milk is fortified with vitamin D, but not a good source of vitamin D. When we supplement them to make up for these genetic variants, we have to take a little higher than normal dose
Mm.
because we've inherited that enzyme that's not working well, so we have to make up for it. If you have a homozygous variant, so if you get one gene from mom, one gene from dad, and both of those genes give you the wrong code for that enzyme, it can be reduced by its effectiveness by about 70%, and that's a big hit. And in that case, it requires a much higher dose of those things. So getting enough of the K2 and A and D, very difficult out of our diets for several reasons that I've mentioned. But so we have to take a higher than normal level of those nutrients to really make up for that genetic variant and make up for the lack of it in our diets. And, that's not even starting with the whole like soil depletion kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's so if a person, with soil depletion, if they don't get enough vitamin A from eating enough fish and vitamin K, because we're not, I mean, who, on the majority, doc, I mean, none of us are like going, hey, this morning I'm having all my leafy greens and having a nice piece of tuna. Nobody's doing that normally.
Yeah.
And I think the accumulation, right, doc, of time, like time of eating not the best way or not getting the nutrients needed to fit your genes would express itself in autoimmune. So that's really
Yeah.
important, doc, because like, okay, vitamin D. So you're saying like autoimmune, cancers, osteoporosis,
Yes.
low immune function are all related to your body's ability of vitamin D. Now, is that
Yes.
why some people will come to us with a blood test? And maybe people out there listening, I have patients that go, my doctor said my vitamin D levels are really, really low, and they're in the 20s or 25. I've been taking a vitamin D for such and such time, and my vitamin D is still low. Is that why? That's
Yes, absolutely. They cannot absorb it if that enzyme isn't working correctly. And so again, we have to open it up with the cofactors, which are the K2 and A. Still caution you not to do that unless you know what's going to happen downstream, because we just made more dopamine and serotonin. And if you have that MAO gene that we talked about, or that comp gene where you can't break down adrenaline, you're going to send that person into anxiety or irritability if you don't know
wow.
what's coming, down the stream. So it's that's the tricky part of this, and that the kinesiology can sort that out, and we do that through muscle testing, but also the software program can sort it out too. But somebody who's also trained in looking at that pathway and going, all right, we're going to turn on this enzyme, but we got to make sure you're safe to do that. So
That's It's so amazing, doc. Like you can do that. You could, because now then you can learn after somebody does absorb the vitamin D, if you gave them a vitamin D, the right one that muscle tested for them or with
yeah,
kinesiology. So if you guys have any questions, send that in the comment section. We're talking about muscle response testing to see if something strengthens our body or weakens it. And then you could look downstream to see if they have the right nutrients that help them break down dopamine and serotonin, if those are produced a bit more from the vitamin D.
correct. Yes.
Oh, okay. See
So
that,
that's why
guys?
I caution people, don't go out and do this. You're gonna, you might feel better for a minute or two, but then you're gonna go into anxiety and not sleeping and irritability, and you're gonna, snap at people. So it's.
So then now, like, okay, so I used to have a joke though, Doc. I would tell people, whenever I think I'm pretty jovial, Doc. But I would say
Always.
I think I'm
Yeah.
pretty jovial. I think I'm a nice guy. But
Always.
I would make a joke, when I wasn't in a good mood, and my friends would laugh, and I was like, all right, my PNMT gene is not working really well, and my norepinephrine, my adrenaline's backing up. I'm a little off. Okay,
Love
leave
it.
it alone. And they would, what the heck are you
What is
talking about? And
this?
I was like, see, I can't talk to anybody. I won't talk to anybody. And I just be like, but see, that makes me laugh because that's what we do. We're nerds. And we'll listen to this and we're like, yeah, like totally. Like, and it does not give us a certain amount of grace. Truly, I had a patient come in, and I know, like, I love story times, but there was a patient that came in, and I mean, her husband always thought she was like, I hate to say, he thought she was just not wanting to work or, just was lazy. And that's the truth. That's what they thought. And she's like, she's always tired. And I remember I was looking at her gene report and she had, what was it? The Indufus. It had an Indufus gene prop, Ndufs, and an MUT, I believe. And I remember you talking about like that is part of the energy cycle that
Mhm.
makes them create energy. Is that right? So literally, she couldn't create energy, I believe, and she was super tired.
Yes. And that, that brings us back to that judgment thing. It's like we think all things are equal, that you're just being
Hmm.
lazy. And, if you start exercising, you'll feel better and you'll have more energy. And it's like, no, no, no. They don't have any gas in the tank. They can't do that. And it's going to make them worse if
Yeah.
you force them to exercise. It'll deplete that tank even more if they have that NDUFAS and the MUT gene. That's in the mitochondria, and they cannot create ATP, which is our basic unit of energy. And so we have a way to turn that on, turn the dial on so that they can make it. So did she end up, did you put her on some mitochondrial support?
Yep. You told me to put on mitochondria support. I put her on like some carnitine and I put her on some mushrooms, like, good, like the regular mushrooms. But we put on some mushrooms and she started creating that. But one thing that I had to be careful of was that when I started to run that, I missed another gene. Truly, that's my issue. It was like in nitric oxide area. But once she started to create that, even with that little mishap on that, she still was creating energy. She was like, "Well, my endurance is getting better today, and I actually feel like I can get up in the morning, and not like feel dragged." And it is. I didn't know this about this doc, but it's almost like she changed from a not a morning person to a morning person. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah.
Like like literally her personality changed. That's what her husband was
Yes.
saying.
100%. Yes. I see a lot of personality change, and usually for the better.
Uh,
I've seen grouchy people just become, just chill. And, personally, dealing with some pretty major depression, I'm a pretty happy person now, and it was a big personality change for me. But it's fun to
mhm.
see. It's fun to see people get the best of themselves back and feel like they're, good. The word I heard the most was content.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
patients would come back
content.
in, like, what? I just feel like for the first time in my life, I'm content. I'm not anxious anymore. I'm not irritable anymore. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm just content. It's like, that's cool. I call that biochemical nirvana.
I love it. And
Yeah.
when you talk about that, Doc, when you say content, some people say that us like you were talking about like in your days when you're in like an office where it's just like you're on the go all the time with patients. And some people have asked me like they've said how do you handle that because you're seeing one person right after the other. And I really mean I was like if I take my supplements, I have to be in a state of contentment where I'm like okay this is where I'm at right now and maybe it doesn't stay this way. Now I will say if I get off track and don't do as much as I need to. I've noticed that my family line has like what we call guys like DDC genes, which means I don't process certain vitamin D and certain vitamin D receptors very well, and I have issues with my family line with dopamine.
Mhm.
So I have a pattern. Okay, so I laugh at this doc. They'll go, I'll go to a spot and I go to an office space. I'm in a new office space now. And I analyze myself. And I want you guys out there to listen. Like you say, like I'm not a morning person. I'm usually pretty good in the morning. But what I'll do is I'll go to a spot and I'll work my way, like I'll work hard, I'll work hard, I'll work hard, and I will work myself to the bone at a certain location. And for some reason, there's a pattern where I can't get enough dopamine hit anymore from that place. Like there's just like I look at my genes, I'm like, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna go to a new spot because I burned myself out of that one spot. And sure enough, Doc, I've looked at it. It's almost every 3 years I had to change spot. And I was like, that's that DDC or maybe something like that hitting in, right? Like
Yeah.
my dopamine gets burnt out or something.
Yeah. There is a genetic variant. It's the DDC, but also it can be the DRD3,
Ah,
which is the
DRD. I'll write that
receptor
down.
for dopamine in the brain. And so those of us that don't, that receptor doesn't work right. We can't even absorb the dopamine when we make it. And it makes us need, crave something new. That's what that impulsive gene, I call it, novelty seeking gene. We need it. We need something new. I need to move. I need to, whatever.
Oh,
Uh,
that's me.
yep, that's me too.
It's like we get bored, don't we? Doc? I mean, I don't mean to. It's just my nature. I can't help it. I don't know about you, Doc. I'll look at, I mean, okay, so I'm not like, I like cars. I'm not like going out and buying new cars. But I mean, I'll get content with the car. But I'm always looking at like a newer thing or something like, oh, I wonder what that'd be like. And I'm like, why am I looking at it? I don't even, but then
You
I
don't
look at my jeans and people around me like, why are you doing? I was like, that's my jeans talking. That's my
yeah, you
jeans.
have an excuse.
Yeah, yeah, it's like that. Don't judge me, Judy. Okay.
That's
No, so,
right.
it's like, but
But yeah, my brother is the complete opposite. He's like been working at the same job for 35 years,
oh,
for the same person for 45 years, lived in the same house. I'm like, that would drive me crazy.
oh, and yeah, no judgment. We're not any judgment. Like I have family members that would do the same. They would work at a factory all their life, just keep
Same thing.
going. And I'm like, I couldn't do that for 5 years. I'd be done.
Oh
No.
man, yeah.
Uh,
But we
I
need
think
those
this,
people. We need them to be bean counters and stay steady and do the job.
in
So
it truly, it's like, I wonder too about how we see this is so fascinating. I wonder how, like, when we look into our genes, why there's such a huge differentiation, but it's beautiful because we all kind of like fit in each other's, world in a
that's
sense.
right. That's right. It takes all kinds, and but it is fascinating, and you start to spot them too. Like you said, it kind of creeps into your language, and even the patients will come in and go, you know what? I think my comp's off balance because I'm feeling a little more anxious and I can't sleep. And I'm like, oh, you nailed it. Yeah. So,
I love it when they say stuff. That's the best, Doc. It's like when you say my COMT or something, like CompT, like if they're not breaking down estrogens.
yeah.
And I remember one patient, I found like a CYP gene or something that was like not working well, and her
Yeah.
CompT, and it was like affecting, and she didn't, and guys, I'm not making fun of the South. I'm from the South, so don't get me wrong. But she would be like, I think my CYP is doing something or something like that. And I would just die laughing. And
I
one of the
love it.
terms was if a person is happy, like, Doc, happy than depressed. And she'd be like, it's like sweet and sour, sweet and sour. It's how I am, sweet and sour. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this comedy out, but this it used to make me laugh so much. But
It's understanding though. I get it. That's so cool that they get
I
it.
love it. I love that we both can talk about how you can see this on the gene report. Truly, and I don't say this to blow Dr. Dunn's head up. I mean, I do this. I mean this. I have a few people in my life that really are like mentors to me, and we don't get to talk that much. But when I think, when I say you're genius, you are. It's like when you look at something and like pathways that are at the top of your head. I remember the story you told us about you were in a plane and you had a cardiologist and you were talking like bar none head to head with the lead cardiologist, telling him about genes in their field and about the heart genes. And I was like, God, I would be like, I'm like, I wouldn't know what to say. I mean, but you hold your own in that area. That's amazing to me, Doc. So
Oh,
amazing.
thank you for that. I appreciate that. So
Oh,
I can't find my way home most of the time, but that's one area.
yeah, that's how I am. People say I'm like, I can rid your body of parasites, but I'm not gonna remember what you said yesterday.
Exactly.
It's
I'm
like
out for breakfast. I mean, like,
exactly. I remember I was talking to Doc. I was talking to I did a podcast with Dr. Gundry, who's like,
mm,
he's like does Plant Paradox, and Dr. Gundry, you'd love him. You guys would have. I know you guys would be kindred spirits. I'm not kidding. There's some people you guys would have a really good combo, and but he was like saying stuff, and I thought it was just me. I don't know, like you and I. Is this how you are? Like, I'm at night or in the morning. I'll get up. I hate to say, and I'll go, "Oh, wait, that's that thing that." And I'd pick my phone up. I was like, "Oh, that's the problem right there. That's the gene. I guarantee." And then people around me are like, "Why do you do that? Like, why?" And then he was saying his wife looks at him and's like, whatever you
yeah,
want to
she's used to
do.
it, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, that's what we all do, right? Like it has to be
Yeah,
like
yeah. Once you get, you're like a dog with a bone, You gotta.
exactly right. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a great combos. I love talking with you, Doc, because you're so calm and cool. And so I want everybody out there to find, we're going to do this every single time because I want you to, I want you to go into my happy genes, everybody out there. And I want you to know this in all seriousness, that there are explanations of why you would have,
Yeah,
right? Your characteristics, I've even seen people, Doc, on your tests. I know I'm getting on, and it's been our time. It's been great, but with ticks, like you
yeah,
told me one time, like people had ticks, and you told me about certain genes that did that, and you know what? We found them, and I
yeah,
was like, oh my word,
yeah.
Oh,
So it makes sense. It's logical, and that's the cool thing about it. And you don't have to be a geneticist or a biochemist to understand it. The logical flow of this thing, which is really cool.
and guys, I just want everybody out there to go to your website. So I want you, Doc, if you could tell your website and your Instagram feed so people can start researching this.
Yeah, I'm gonna start doing more Instagram, but I'm doing a lot of YouTube videos. So if you put in Dr. J Dunn, you'll see a series called Q&A with Dr. J, and they're individual topics. They're short little
Mm,
videos, and you can write in for a topic, and like we're gonna do, if people want to write in and say, hey, can you talk about like cognitive decline or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or any topic that you're interested in, kind of the underlying genetics. Detox, we kind of skirted around, but there's a lot more to say about that and
oh,
brain
that's
chemistry
good.
as well. So
Oh, that's
yeah, holisticmethylation.com is where I did the sort of the muscle testing and the educational program. And then myhappygenes.com is where you can go to get your genes tested. And the software does it for you. You don't have to know this stuff, but know that there is science behind every bit of the program, the software program. I did it because it's a lot. It's a lot of biochemistry. It's hard to, like you said, you first looked at that chart and you're like, oh my God. One doctor said, yeah, I just wanted to throw up. I could like, uh,
hey.
but it's all programmed into the software, so you don't have to think about it, which is nice.
I can't tell you how many times, Doc, I had my computer right beside my treatment table, and I'd be like, "Oh, you have this," and I'd put on that program, like, "Oh, that makes total sense," and I would, and just thankful. And
So
guys,
send in topics and let me know what you're interested in talking about with.
oh yeah, they're gonna ask you some good questions. It's gonna be great, and I think it's gonna be fun. So I just want you guys to know that you have grace and compassion for yourself, and Doc's,
Yeah,
and she's always taught that, and I'm just thankful that you're on here today. So,
that's the
um,
biggest message, is understanding there is a reason why you are the way you are, and there's hope that you can actually change it. So
that's true.
yeah.
I will say this though, when I have and my quirks. And I say that lovingly to myself, but I realize that as I get older, like when some express themselves, I go, "Oh, that's that gene
Yeah.
coming through. I need some nutrients for that." So,
Yeah, that's fun
um,
when you look at your body and your personality that way. So
yep. And the people you love that are around you that may have an attitude issue, you know what I say to them, Doc? I'm like, "Your MTRR is kicking in right now, and you need to relax, and you need to get some folic acid, the form that you can take, and then we'll talk." Until then, sorry, that's okay. We won't do that. Don't do that to anybody that's has a bad attitude. Okay. All right. From all of us here, Doc, thanks so much for joining us today. We're gonna have
thank
her
you,
on
Dr.
again.
Motley. You're the best.
Oh, it's so grace. It's so you're the best. All right. From everybody here at the Ancient Health Podcast, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, talk soon.